about it.
It seems that a lot of people don't understand that all of the politicians in Washington have taken an oath of office to defend, protect, support, whatever, the Constitution of the United States. And what's your opinion about that? Do you feel like the Washington politicians are constantly thinking of their oath of office when they write legislation and vote? What do you think?
Probably not, but I think they should be. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution requires all members of Congress to take an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution. My copy of the Constitution doesn't say they've got to take an oath to uphold, protect, and defend whatever set of rules the Supreme Court will allow them to get away with. It says the Constitution itself. So in my mind, that means they've got to look to the text. They've got to look to the document. They've got to look to the way it was written, the way it was understood by the founding generation, in order to understand whether or to what extent they're complying with that oath. And if they're not, then they're oath breakers.
Okay, would you also consider that to be an act of perjury as well? You're an attorney, aren't you? I
am an attorney.
Okay.
Look, anytime you take an oath and you knowingly break it, there are profound consequences for that. We wouldn't typically classify that as perjury, but we would classify that as oath breaking and a breach of public trust.
Okay. When we fill out a tax return, we have to sign swearing that all of the information is true, full, and correct, or under the penalties of perjury.
Right.
Now, a politician in Washington, does he also have to sign an oath of office too?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, what is that? Is there a special term for that you know of?
I think there's just a document accompanied with the oath of office indicating that they've signed it, and there may be a written version of it, I don't know.
Okay, what would you recommend would be an important thing to do for most people that might see this documentary to prepare themselves for voting in the next election?
Ask their members of Congress and all candidates who are seeking office, federal office of any kind, will you follow the text of the Constitution? Whenever they're supporting or voting for or against any piece of legislation, ask them, what is it in Article 1, Section 8 that gives them the power to do this? If they can't answer that in one word or one sentence based on the text of the Constitution, they need to be released.
Okay, and one last question. What is the penalty for violating one's oath of office, or is there a penalty?
In this context, we're talking about violating an oath of office in a way that the courts might allow them to get away with. So there's no penalty that we're going to be able to enforce in court. But there is a different penalty called for by the Constitution, and that's called losing an election.
Okay. And one more thought on that. I have a friend who's a retired major general, and he says when a military person violates his oath of office, it's Leavenworth.
Right.
But I guess a politician is above that and doesn't need to worry about that.
Yeah. Perhaps they shouldn't be above that anymore.
Okay, great.
Maybe we ought to send some of them to Leavenworth as well.
Yes. You have a message of hope.
I do. I do have a message of hope. It's a message that says that we can reclaim our future. We can reclaim what we're entitled to as Americans if we restore the constitutional debate. If we return to an understanding that Congress isn't supposed to be all things to all people. That our federal government isn't there to solve all of our problems, but that a lot of our problems can be solved a lot more effectively if Congress will stick to those limited powers they were given by the Constitution.
Great, and it looks like you're going to have a big sort of missionary opportunity for the cause of freedom and for the cause of the Constitution. And how hopeful are you with that cause, considering who's going to be there should you be elected? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm very confident about it because the words of the Constitution, just about 4,500 words long, resonate with the people. And it also happens to be the case that it's the law of the land. It's our law of laws. The political change that we're seeing this year is unmistakable. But we have to remember that there are some things in our laws that were intended never to change, or at least to be very, very difficult to change. And that's the Constitution. That's why we have it. It's supposed to be a law that doesn't change from one administration to another or from one Congress to another. It's supposed to remain consistent. And it's that law that says the federal government's there just to do a few basic things like national defense and immigration, regulating interstate and foreign trade, to name a few.
Now, the next national election, 2010, are there going to be enough seats available to get enough fresh blood in there to really do some great things?
Certainly. I mean, of course, every seat in the House of Representatives is up every 2 years. Every seat in the House of Representatives will be up this year. About a third of the seats in the U.S. Senate will be up this year, and I think a lot of those seats are going to change hands, and a lot of people are going to be replaced with new people who will stand for constitutionally limited government. There aren't that many voices for self-restraint under the Constitution there right now. There are about to be a lot more. I think we'll have between 10 and 12 by the end of this year.
Do you think we're going to have a 70% majority of more conservative thinking in the House and Senate in 2010?
That I can't. That I wouldn't promise. That I wouldn't expect. But any progress we can make in this area is good progress, and it's progress toward an eventual bigger change in our federal government.
Maybe a more general question. Do you think we might have 70% of Republicans? It seems like everyone's upset with the Democrats, and it looks like Democrats are not going to get into office. And if all the Republicans take the available seats, would that do a 70%?
I would love to see a 70% supermajority in Congress from Republicans. I don't expect it, but we'll see.
Well, the Democrats have been able to do it, so that'd be something. Well, the reason we're having this interview now is because we want more time from you on this DVD that's going to go to all the state delegates. We're going to send it out at the end of the week. And so what could you kind of put in a nutshell that you think people should hear that separate you from the other candidates?
I've spent a lifetime studying the Constitution. I started worrying about the erosion of state sovereignty by the time I was 10. And I know that's kind of weird, but I guess I was a weird kid. But it's that kind of person that you want representing you in the United States Senate. You want somebody who has been deeply bothered since he was a little kid about the fact that the federal government has bit by bit rendered the 10th Amendment almost meaningless by pretending that it has the power to do anything and everything it wants. That has to change. It has to change right now. And we in Utah need to be at the cutting edge of that change. If we in Utah can't send 2 senators back to the U.S. Senate every single time who will stand for constitutionally limited government and who will exercise self-restraint in the powers they wield, who can? And I hate to quote Democratic presidents, but if not us, who? And if not now, when? I look at Utah, and that's what I think.
You know, I've interviewed Senator Bob Bennett, and he actually referred to your father. Your father, Rex Lee, is that correct?
Yes, he was my dad.
And what position did he hold in government?
My dad was the Solicitor General of the United States under the Reagan administration. It was his job to serve as the chief advocate for the United States government before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, and he was also, wasn't he a constitutional law professor at BYU?
Yes, he was. He was the founding dean of the law school at BYU and was later president of the university shortly before he died in 1996.
Was he a great influence on your learning about the Constitution and understanding its intent and history?
Of course. It's something we talked about around the dinner table. I think I was about 30 before I realized not everybody does that. But it's what we talked about in my house. When I was a little kid, my dad wrote a book called A Lawyer Looks at the Constitution. And he dedicated that book to me, and I know it sounds corny, but ever since then, I've sort of regarded the Constitution as part of my mission in life, part of what I'm supposed to learn about, part of what I'm supposed to stand for, and that's why I'm running.
Well, that's great. You probably don't remember, but your father was my home teacher, the Brunson brothers. We live kitty corner from you.
You're one of those Brunsons?
Yes.
You guys played a mean trumpet. You were really good. I would hear you practicing at night thinking, wow, I would love to be able to play like that. Do you still play?
Yes, we do. We're going to start doing weekly shows. We're building a studio. You might have seen it in the paper. There was kind of a bit of an uproar about this big addition going on in my brother's house.
That's fantastic. Yeah, you live just across the street from us. That's great.
Hopefully we'll be able to have some meetings there and have you come and speak.
Yes, only if you guys will play the trumpet.
Okay, we definitely will.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I'd like to add just the message of optimism. This is something that is realistic, it's doable, it's achievable. If we as citizens will team together and we'll decide that it's time for our government to change, that it's time for our Congress to stop doing more to live up to the oath to the Constitution than simply point across the street to the Supreme Court and say, we can do this because those guys, those people in robes across the street at the Supreme Court said we could get away with it. There's a big difference between being true to your oath to the Constitution and doing whatever the courts will put up with. That's what I want to stand for. I will restrain my own power as a member of the U.S. Senate, and I will do my darndest to make sure that other senators do the same thing. That we recognize that just because we can exercise a particular power and the courts will let us get away with it, that doesn't mean we should do it. We have to start rolling back the government. We'll do that. As we do that, we'll restore liberty to America.
Do you think as a U.S. Senator you can help some kind of a national campaign to help people, all citizens of this great country, become more aware of the Constitution and the rights that they have?
Yes, absolutely. And I started a movement in Utah about a year ago starting to give speeches around the state about the Constitution. We formed a group called the Article 1 Society, and the group's purpose was to help educate people about Article 1, Section 8. If every American would simply read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and read that together with the 10th Amendment, that by itself would change America. Because when people read the powers listed in Article 1, Section 8, they realize they're not unlimited. They realize that they're pretty basic. They focus on a few things like national defense, immigration, and interstate and foreign trade. And not everything else. They don't have the power to redistribute wealth. They don't have the power to bail out failing banks and auto companies and nationalize our healthcare system.
That's great advice. And you know, as you know, the Declaration of Independence is connected to most pamphlets of the Constitution. And today I just sort of realized that that's sort of to help us understand the purpose for the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence.
That's right. If you read the Declaration, you read the full Declaration, you'll realize a lot of the American Revolution had to do with a lot of the same things we face today. Had to do with an oppressive national government that didn't respect our laws, that was slow to respond to the needs of the people, in part because it was so distant from them, and it taxed us too much and it regulated us too much. So that sounds very familiar to us. Now, the answer today, fortunately, is a lot easier than the answer they had to face back then. This is a revolution that need not be fought and should not be fought with the sword and the musket. It doesn't need to be. That war has been fought, and we won that war. All we have to do now to reclaim our future is just return to the document that created the federal government to begin with and vote accordingly. Vote according to those people that you think will stand up for the Constitution and will recognize the necessarily limited powers that Congress has. That's all it takes.
This message is going to the state delegates, but you know what? This message should go to every person in America.
Well, thank you. I hope it will.
It's a very helpful message. I appreciate your time very much, and this will be going out this weekend.